Okay, I'm gonna do a couple of blips from the candidates, and I'm gonna warn you in advance. When they start getting into bullshit rhetoric, I'm just gonna pause it and skip to where a question is asked and they answer it before they start rambling. And Ted Cruz basically is going to be the first one.
Begin with Senator Ted Cruz in Missouri.
Thank you, George. Good to be with you.
We've seen these extraordinary scenes at the Trump rallies, and you said the Trump campaign affirmatively encourages the violence. So to be clear, you believe Mr. Trump is encouraging this violence?
Well, let's be clear. First of all, the protesters were in the wrong. When you come up and you use violence, you engage in violence, you threaten violence, and when you try to shut down and shout down speech, that's not what the First Amendment allows. The First Amendment gives every one of us the right to speak, but not to disrupt others. But I think also in any campaign, the responsibility starts at the top, and it is not beneficial when you have a candidate like Donald Trump who's telling his protesters, punch that guy in the face. I don't think you should be encouraging people to violence. And I think beyond that, we need a
Now, didn't he just blame, take both sides of the same issue? First, he's blaming the protesters, and then he's blaming the guy, I guess in this case, Trump. So, I mean, come on. The protesters, it was the Trump supporters that were violent inside the arena, and it was also the anti-Trump guys that were violent. So, they both were going back and forth. You got to make your own call. Now, I'm going to skip, this portion is bullshit, so I'm going to skip past this really quick, and I'm going to pick it up from the next question. Okay, here's the next question that was asked.
He says this is being pre-planned and organized by his opponents, but do you believe this might be a conscious strategy on his part to drive out his vote?
Well, listen, I don't know if it's his strategy or not. I do know that his approach to every issue is simply to use angry rhetoric, often to engage in insults, often to curse and yell, and that's not a productive solution. Listen.
Okay. And there he's getting ready to go off into his rhetoric again, so I'm going to pause it and jump to the next question. Okay, here's the next question.
Both Marco Rubio and John Kasich says that what they're seeing right now is making it more difficult for them to support Mr. Trump if he's the nominee. Is it making it more difficult for you?
Well, listen, the approach to Donald, I think if Donald Trump is the nominee, I think it is a disaster. I think it's a disaster for Republicans, for conservatives. I think it's a disaster for the country because it...
Okay, so honestly, he never answers the question, so I'm going to jump to the next question. Okay, that was about 2 minutes worth of Ted Cruz rhetoric, so we're going to pick it up at the hopefully next question.
And we're seeing Republicans unite.
I know you believe you can beat him, but I have to press this a little bit. If you believe that Donald Trump and his campaign are encouraging violence, how could you support him if he's the nominee? Isn't that a line that should not be condoned? Crossing that line, should that not be condoned?
And I'm not condoning it. I am encouraging everyone to focus on decency and civility and appealing to our better angels. But
okay, that was the answer, and now he's going to do another minute's worth. Okay, we're picking it up at the next question.
So you just said that a brokered convention would lead to revolt. So does that mean that you accept Mr. Trump's standard that whoever has the lead in delegates going into the convention should be the nominee?
Listen, there is a difference between a brokered convention and a contested convention. A brokered convention is there's a deadlock and the Washington deal makers come in and pick their favorite candidate who wasn't even part of the mix. That would be an absolute disaster, and it would cause the voters quite rightly to revolt. There's a difference with a contested convention where you have two candidates who come in who are neck and neck. We saw...
Now notice he says two candidates. So he's already discounting Rubio, which, I guess is okay. And he's also discounting Kasich. But in a contested convention, anybody's name can be thrown in there. But as far as he's concerned, it should only the top two should be considered. And since everybody hates Donald, he's basically presenting himself as the person that everybody should coalesce around, even if he comes in second with the number of delegates.
That's in 1976 with Reagan and Ford. And the delegates decide. The delegates decide using the rules of the RNC. They vote.
So even if you're number two, you're saying you could be the nominee.
Oh, look, if Donald and I both go into the convention and we both got a big chunk of delegates, but both of us are shy of 1237, then the delegates will decide. That's how the process works. And that's allowing democracy to operate. That's allowing the voters to decide. But
okay, and here he goes with another run in rhetoric. All right, I'm going to give you his last little blip just so I can have a little continuity here.
George, the best approach is get to 1237 before the convention. And if you look at the delegates right now, we have 362. Donald has 99 more than we do. Everyone else is way, way, way below. And so what I would say to folks at home, even if you started this campaign supporting somebody else, even if right now you're thinking of supporting perhaps Marco Rubio or John Kasich, they're both good, honorable, decent men. I like and respect both of them. But neither one of them have any possibility of beating Donald Trump. It's mathematically impossible. And so I would say if you're thinking of supporting one of them, we would welcome you to our team. If you don't want to see Donald Trump as the nominee, if you don't want to see Hillary Clinton as the president, then come join us. And we are seeing millions of Republicans uniting and doing just that.
Senator Cripp?
And I just wanted to get sick just listening to this guy. But anyway, I'm going to continue this with, I believe, Kasich is next, but he really doesn't say much. But I'm going to try to give him a little time anyway. Okay, here's Kasich. I'm trying to give him a little time, but honestly, he rambles on as well.
This morning, and we have to begin with this remarkable series of events this weekend. You said Mr. Trump has created this toxic environment. If that's true, if he's responsible, as you say, for preying on people's fears, how can you also say you'll still support him if he's the nominee?
Well, George, look, I said in the debate when they asked if I would support him, I said yes, but sometimes it's really tough. The last debate that he was in, as you know, they all sort of caught the contagious positivity that I've displayed, and things calmed down. But nothing's 100%. I mean, I hope to be able to support whoever the nominee is, but I have to tell you, George, I don't think he's going to be the nominee. I'm going to win in Ohio. We're rising all across the country, and I believe there's a good chance that I could go into the convention with the largest number of delegates, because the campaign has shifted to places where I think we're going to do better. Plus, one other thing. Finally, people are starting to get my message. And when I talk about the fact that, I want to lift people, I know how to create jobs, I had
to stop. Yeah, here we go again. And again, if you really look at the math, he probably, out of the remainers, and I'm not even going to count Rubio as one of the remainders, because I don't think he's going to be in after he loses Florida on Tuesday. But Kasich is going to be way, way, way behind everybody else. And it's darn near impossible, probably, for him to even catch Trump. All right, here comes George, hopefully with his next question statement.
You ahead in Ohio just 2 days before these votes, and I want to get to that in a second. But first, a yes or no question. Is Donald Trump fit to be president?
I'm not going to, you're not going to get me to answer a yes or no question. I hope he's going to change his rhetoric and bring people together and start.
Now notice, he said you're not going to get him to answer a yes or a no question. So that means he's going to sit up there and bullshit you.
Dividing people. Stop dividing people.
He's not shy about suggesting you're not. Here's what he said yesterday in Ohio. Take a listen.
We are going to hopefully win Ohio. Honestly, Kasich is a baby. He's a baby. He can't be president. He can't be president. Too many problems.
Your response?
You think I'm going to wallow in the mud with Donald Trump? Are you kidding me? I'm not interested in what he says. I'm interested in appealing to his voters. And these are people, George, who are worried about their job, the stability of their job. They haven't had any wage increases.
Okay, so enough of that. Let's hopefully jump to the next question. Okay, here's the next question. Aren't you happy that I'm jumping through all the bullshit and trying basically to get to questions and whatever they consider answers?
To appeal to those voters as well. One of the things he's hitting on, both on the stump and on the air in Ohio right now, is your support of NAFTA. He's saying that has cost Ohioans jobs.
George, we're up over 400,000 jobs here in the state of Ohio. In fact, we have investments. I was just in a plant in Dayton where we have a $500 million investment from the Chinese, and they've employed over 1,000 people there. I was intimately involved in bringing that to Ohio. Yesterday, I was in a plant in Newark, Ohio, where we have a significant German investment in the energy business.
I wonder what the wages that are being paid in those jobs are. He never really comments about that.
Investments from all over the world. Our wages are growing faster. We have a $2 billion surplus, cut taxes more than anybody in the country, and we're not out of the woods, but we've made unbelievable progress. And I'm sitting in the city of Cleveland, which is the new Cleveland of the 21st century, and we're doing very well. So look, I don't pay any attention to all this kind of nonsense.
Okay, so enough of that. Let's go to the next question. Okay, here's the next question statement.
Confident about your state, about how you're going to do on Tuesday. Is Ohio the turning point? If you block Donald Trump in Ohio, will he not be the nominee?
I absolutely believe that. Look.
And that was the answer to the question, so let's just jump to the next one. Okay, now here's a question about him being on a ballot in Pennsylvania. He didn't register, I guess, in a timely manner, so in order to get on the Pennsylvania ballot, he needs to get a certain number of signatures to place him on the ballot. George seems to think that he doesn't have the number yet, but he's going to indicate that he believes that he does.
But you're not on the ballot in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, we'll be on the ballot in Pennsylvania. That's all a bunch of political gibberish over there, too. It's amazing people try to keep you from getting on the ballot, but we'll be fine. We will be competing in Pennsylvania.
Even though you don't have enough ballot signatures now?
No, we're fine in Pennsylvania. We're fine. This will all be resolved here soon.
And finally, we heard Senator Cruz say that if somehow at the Republican convention the establishment parachutes in with an establishment candidate, there's going to be a revolt. Your response to that?
Well, if there's an establishment candidate, George, it's certainly not going to be me. And, I think that at the end of the day, delegates are going to pick somebody with a record, somebody who has proven experience, and somebody who can win places like Ohio and compete in other places. I beat Hillary more than anybody else. And in Ohio, I think I'm the only Republican who can beat Hillary in this state. So, look, we just keep plugging one foot in front of the other. But remember this, my goal, economic growth, jobs, 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 and make sure that everyone who lives in the shadows has a chance to emerge and live out their God-given purpose, George. We're having a great time out here.
I can see it. You're still smiling. Governor Casey, thanks for joining us this morning.
I'm having a ball. Thanks, George.
Okay.
All right, so I'll let him get his last comment in. And now the third person is little Marco Rubio. So I'm going to jump to his portion. Okay, now it's little Marco's turn. Let's go.
Thanks, Senator Rubio. Thank you for joining us this morning. Boy, we looked at those clips of you yesterday. You seemed honestly shaken by what you've seen this weekend. How did we get this far?
I think we all need to look at ourselves for a moment and ask ourselves. I think that includes the media, George, to be honest. I mean, if you think about Donald Trump says these outrageous and offensive things, his speeches get covered live by cable networks, wall to wall. I mean, and I know it's good for ratings to have him on people's show. I know he's good for ratings to cover these speeches because of what he might say. But I think the media is responsible for some of this. But I think ultimately the responsibility bears on, look, those protesters in Chicago, a lot.
All right, before we get into this bullshit about the protesters that he's going to claim are paid, but he has no actual factual information regarding them being paid. He is right about the media because the media has been covering Donald Trump 24/7 ever since he announced. And that basically is free publicity. Whereas these other guys weren't getting anywhere near the coverage. Now, I will give you this. Trump basically, on all the mainstream media cable networks, he calls in and they take his calls, and they do at least 20 minutes or more of telephone interview with Trump, and that's every single one of the cable news networks, CNN, Fox, and MSNBC. Whereas very rarely do any of these other candidates call into the shows. Now, Bernie Sanders has called in. I think Kasich lately has called in once or twice. Clinton never calls in, okay? And on Fox, Ted Cruz gets all the coverage that he wants. So Rubio's right. Now Rubio's going to jump into this paid protester bullshit, and he picked that up from Trump. There's no doubt in my mind where he got that from.
A lot of them, I believe, were paid and organized. That wasn't some organic thing. Put that aside for a moment. You have I think you saw MoveOn.org. I think you saw all these different elements involved. There's a professional industry of protest in Chicago, okay? That doesn't, and they don't have the right to disrupt an event and threaten violence so it doesn't occur. But put that aside for a moment. It's not just a thing in Chicago. Donald Trump, on a regular basis, incites his crowds. He tells them, I'll beat the guy up and I'll pay your legal fees. You have a guy who sucker punches a man at one of his events, is arrested, and upon release says, the next time we're going to kill him. No condemnation. You have his campaign manager is accused here in Florida of assaulting a female reporter. Again, no condemnation or sense of responsibility. Last night he repeats this ridiculous story about an American general that dipped bullets in pig's blood and shot a bunch of prisoners who were Muslim. Again, it's like goes off people's back because it's just we've become numb to this outrage. There are people out there that are unbalanced. There are people out there that listen to this stuff and we don't know how they're going to react. And he keeps putting this stuff out there. We're going to have an ugly scene here. We already have seen these ugly scenes. And I think the other point I would make is how we've now reached a point in this country where our political discourse looks like the comment section of a blog, where people can just say whatever they want about anyone without any rules of civility, no norms that govern how we interact with one another. If we've reached the point where we can't debate the proper tax rate, our health care policy, our differences on foreign policy, what the government's role should be in education, without resorting to, you're a bad person, you're an evil person, I can say or do anything I want because I'm angry, we're going to lose our republic, and we're most certainly going to lose our ability to solve problems.
Those are strong words, lose our republic. If that is indeed the case, isn't it more important to stand up to this violence than to stand by your pledge to support the nominee, even if it's Donald Trump?
More important to do so?
To stand up to that violence.
I mean, I think, well, absolutely, we've got to stand up to it. My point is, I don't know if your question is, do I stick by the pledge or not stick by the pledge? What I said yesterday is, look, I'll be honest with you, it's getting harder every day. It really is. Because while I don't want Hillary Clinton to be president of the United States, I do not. I want her to be defeated. I think we're having a battle to define conservatism in the Republican Party. I do not want the Republican Party or the conservative movement to be defined by what I'm seeing out of Donald Trump's campaign. I know people are angry. I know people are frustrated. But leadership is not about making people even angrier and even more frustrated and asking them to give you power so you can go after another group of people that you want to blame for people's anger and frustration. Real leadership is recognizing people are angry, recognizing people are frustrated, and then showing them a way forward that gives them hope and a belief that we can make things better. That's...
All right, so that he rambled on, so I let him go for a minute. He jumped to the next question. All right, here's the next question. I let that first section of Rubio's comments go because he was basically being pretty factual and he wasn't campaigning, but he started going on and rambling, so I had to cut him off. Here's the next question.
You hope to be the nominee, but the latest polls show you pretty far behind in Florida right now. Can you really imagine campaigning for Donald Trump this fall if he's the nominee?
Well, first, let me just tell you, on Wednesday morning, some pollsters somewhere are going to have to explain why they're so wrong, not just about Florida, but multiple different places. All
right, now let me answer the question. He never did answer that question, so let's jump to the next one. Okay, that basically was the last question, so I'm going to jump to the end of his response.
He needs 60% of the delegates from this point forward in order to be the nominee. Ted Cruz, by the way, needs 75% of the remaining delegates to be the nominee. That's the real math. I, at the end of the day, do not believe that Donald Trump will be our nominee. And I'm going to do everything possible to keep that from happening and to give the party a choice in me, someone that people aren't going to have to be asked that question about. If I'm our nominee, no one's going to be asked, will you support the nominee of their president? We'll unite the party, we'll grow it, and we'll win.
Sounds like you're saying we're going to see you in Cleveland. Okay, Senator, thanks for joining us.
Now, how the hell is he going to end up being the party's nominee? He's in third. He's basically not going to Trump, jump past Cruz, and pick him. And honestly, Kasich's saying the same thing. Kasich's saying that he wants the party, if everything stays the way it is, and as far as percentages, Kasich's saying that he wants the party to jump past Trump, jump past Cruz, and if Rubio's still there, to jump past Rubio. And it's going to be utter chaos.